The wind howled through the broken trees, carrying with it the scent of blood, ash, and something worse, fear. The war had come without warning. It was supposed to be a diplomatic visit. Humans and the Varkari species had finally agreed to meet. On neutral ground, a remote jungle planet called Cal 7. The mission was simple, peace talks, but something had gone terribly wrong. Private Elias. Carter's boots sank deep into the mud as he crouched behind the smoking wreckage of a Varkari transport ship. His team was gone, either captured or dead. His comms were silent. And above all, he wasn't alone anymore. Something was watching him from the trees. It wasn't the Varkari soldiers. He had seen them retreating, running for their lives, shouting words in their harsh, barking language. It wasn't fear of humans that had chased them off. No, they were running from something else, something older, something that ruled this planet long before either of their species arrived. The jungle around him shifted again. Leaves twitched. A branch cracked. Elias gripped his pulse rifle tighter, but deep down, he knew it wouldn't help. Whatever it was too fast. Too quiet. Too smart. The only reason he was still alive was because the thing hadn't decided to kill him yet. He didn't move. Didn't breathe too hard. He just listened. And then, from the shadows of the thick underbrush, he saw a dot. It stood at least 8 feet. Tall, covered in a thick coat of scaled black fur, like obsidian shards grown over muscle. Its limbs were long, bent in unnatural ways, and its yellow eyes glowed like fire. Sharp tusks jutted from the sides of its mouth, and when it took a step, the ground seemed to listen. It was the apex predator of Cal-7. The Varkari called it the Vrex. Elias had heard the name whispered in briefings. He had laughed along with the rest of his squad when the alien officers warned them, "Do not provoke the Vrex." Now he wasn't laughing. The beast moved closer, slow and deliberate, sniffing the air, its head tilting as if confused. Elias didn't raise his weapon. He knew it'd be a waste. Instead, he did something strange, something human. He lowered his gun. The Vrex paused. They stared at each other, man and monster. Elias was shaking, every muscle tight with terror, but he held still. Something in its eyes changed. It blinked. Sniffed again. Then took another step forward. "Easy," Elias said quietly, not knowing why he spoke at all. It growled, low and deep, a sound that made the leaves tremble. But then slowly it sat down. Right in front of him. Elias didn't understand. But he didn't move either. They remained like that, face to face, breath to breath, until the sun began to set behind the misty trees. On the other side of the jungle, a group of Varkari scouts watched the same scene through binoculars. One of them, a female soldier named Kirel, couldn't believe what she was seeing. Her violet eyes narrowed in disbelief as the human touched the Vrex's head-open palm. Gentle touch. The creature didn't attack. Instead, it leaned in. Kirel whispered, "He's touching it. The apex beast is letting him live." The older Varkari beside her hissed in shock. "No, it cannot be. No living things the Vrex. They are born to hunt and kill. Even our queens fear them." But the proof was there, clear as day. The Vrex, who had slaughtered dozens of Varkari soldiers, was now sitting calmly beside the human, like a tamed guardian. Like an ally. Back in the clearing, Elias finally dared to move. Slowly, carefully, he reached into his vest pocket and pulled out a protein bar. He unwrapped it and held it out. The Vrex sniffed it curiously, then snatched it and chewed slowly. Licking the wrapper, Elias laughed softly. "You've got a sweet tooth, huh?" The beast huffed through its nose and lay down, still watching him. Its tail flicked lazily, just like a giant cat. Elias should have been terrified. But something deep inside told him this creature wasn't his enemy. Not anymore. far above them. Hidden cameras from both factions captured every moment. The footage was already being streamed back to their respective commanders. Military officials watched in silence. Scientists adjusted their glasses. War leaders clenched their jaws. And far in the Valkyrie capital, the Queen's advisor whispered, "If the humans can tame the Vrex, then the war might already be lost." They hadn't planned for this. No one had. Back at the clearing, Elias slowly leaned back against a rock. The Vrex curled up beside him like a living wall of muscle and claws. He was still alone, still stranded. But now, he wasn't defenseless, and something deep inside the planet had shifted. The apex predator had chosen. Asterisk Elias didn't sleep that night. Even with the Vrex curled beside him like a hulking beast-shaped shield, every sound in the jungle still made his nerves jump. Insects chattered. Distant howls echoed. Trees groaned under their own weight. But the apex predator didn't stir. It rested calmly, its massive chest rising and falling with slow, controlled breaths. Like it wasn't worried. Like it knew no one would dare approach while it was near. Elias kept one hand on his rifle anyway, just in case. Morning came like a slow burn through the fog. Sunlight filtered between thick canopies of glowing leaves, turning the world into a mix of green and gold. When Elias finally stood, stretching sore legs and a stiff back, the Vrex lifted its head. Their eyes met again. Elias said softly, "You're still here." "Didn't expect that." The beast gave a soft rumble in its throat. Not a growl. More like acknowledgement. He didn't know what kind of bond had formed overnight. Was it trust? Curiosity? Instinct? He didn't care. It had saved his life just by staying. And now Elias needed to move. "I need to find a way off this planet," he muttered. The Vrex stood as well. It followed him, step by step, shadowing his movements like a loyal dog if dogs were 15 feet long with claws like daggers. Elias didn't argue. He just kept walking. They traveled through dense jungle, navigating fallen trees, ancient ruins swallowed by vines, and pools of still glowing water. Twice, Elias nearly slipped, and each time, the beast moved closer as if ready to catch him. It was unsettling, but not threatening. Then came the sound. Not animal. Not natural. Voices. Electronic pings. Foreign footsteps crunching leaves. Elias ducked low. The Vrex stilled, blending into the brush like shadow. Up ahead, a small Valkyrie patrol moved between trees. 3 soldiers, armed and alert. One of them was the same female scout, Kirel. Her eyes scanned the foliage with precision, her long rifle pointed low but ready. Elias knew he had 2 options: hide and wait them out, or approach and risk being shot. He didn't get to choose either. The Vrex stepped into the open, not aggressive, not charging, just walking forward silently like it had nothing to fear. The patrol froze. All 3 raised their weapons. "By the stars," one whispered, "it's the same beast." Kirel hissed. "The one from the footage. And it's alone?" The other asked. "No, it's..." Then Elias stepped into view behind it, rifle lowered, hands half raised. "Don't shoot." The Valkyrie weren't sure who to aim at. "You're..." "The human," Kirel said slowly. "The one who touched it." Elias nodded. "Didn't have much of a choice. Seemed like a better idea than dying. Why is it still with you?" "You tell me. Maybe I smell good." The other soldier barked something in Valkyrie tongue. Kirel raised a hand, silencing him. "We should take you in," she said, "as prisoner." The Vrex growled low and sharp, bearing a set of curved teeth. Elias didn't even flinch. "You can try." Kirel stared at him, confused, maybe even intrigued. "No human has ever survived more than minutes near a Vrex. We've lost hundreds of soldiers trying to fight them. Yet it follows you." "I don't control it," Elias said. "It just doesn't want me dead." There was a long silence. The soldiers lowered their rifles slowly, still tense. Then Kirall stepped closer, her eyes never leaving the beast. "What did you do to it?" "Nothing. I just didn't shoot." "Maybe that's all it ever wanted." She looked down at the jungle floor, thinking. Then back at Elias. "We have a base not far from here. Our comms are damaged. If you help us reach it safely, we'll return the favor. Maybe even get you home." Elias nodded. "Fine, but the beast comes too." "What?" "It's part of the deal." The two Varkari soldiers behind her immediately protested in their native tongue. Kirall silenced them again. "If we die, it's on you, human." "No pressure," Elias replied. And so, the strangest group on the planet began walking together, two alien warriors, one lone human, and the deadliest apex predator Cal 7 had ever known. The tension was thick, but every step the beast took beside them made it clear Elias was under its protection. Hours passed. By midday, the base came into view, half buried under jungle roots, metal walls scorched from recent attacks. As they neared the perimeter, alarms triggered. Defensive drones buzzed overhead, targeting systems locked on. One drone fired a warning shot into the dirt ahead of them. Elias raised his arms. "Tell them not to shoot." Kirall stepped forward and shouted in her language. The drones hesitated, but the base defenses didn't lower. The Vrex stepped in front of Elias, blocking him. Then came the loudest voice of all, from the command tower speakers above. "Human, step away from the predator." Elias shouted back, "If I do, I die." Silence. Then, "Explain." Elias didn't lower his voice. "It follows me. It listens to me. I didn't tame it. It chose me. You want peace? This beast might be the key." Inside the command tower, officers exchanged shocked glances. Some wanted him shot. Others wanted to hear more. Back in the jungle, Kirall whispered under her breath, "You really did it, didn't you?" Elias didn't answer. He only placed a hand on the Vrex's side, and once again, the apex predator didn't resist. It leaned into him. Inside the Varkari base, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Soldiers stood frozen behind barricades, their weapons trained on Elias and the Vrex. Engineers scrambled to reroute power to interior shielding, and the command officers argued in hushed voices behind reinforced glass. No one had ever seen anything like this. The apex predator feared. Across multiple star systems, responsible for over 100 Varkari casualties, stood beside a lone human as if it were his personal guardian. The gate hissed open. Elias walked in first, the Vrex close at his side, ignoring every threat pointed its way. Kirall and her patrol followed slowly behind. Inside the base, no one dared approach. General Vrex arrived moments later. He was taller than most Varkari, his armor marked with battle honors and claw marks. His eyes burned with suspicion as he stepped down from the platform, flanked by two guards. His voice was low and sharp. "What is this, human?" Elias didn't blink. "It followed me. I didn't call it. And yet you walk with it like it's your pet." "I don't own it," Elias said, his voice calm but firm. "It made its own choice." Vrex scowled and turned to Kirall. "Is this true?" She nodded. "It's not behaving like any other Vrex we've seen. It shows awareness, control, and it protects him." "It should be put down," Vrex growled. "It is a threat to all of us." Elias stepped forward. "If you try, you'll die first." The Vrex growled softly, as if backing him up. Everyone froze. Vrex stared at Elias for a long time. Then, with a wave of his hand, he ordered the guards to lower their weapons. "Fine, let it live. For now, but you'll stay in the lower quarters under watch, both of you." Elias nodded. "Fair." Later, in a reinforced storage chamber converted into temporary housing, Elias sat with his back against a crate, trying to figure out what the hell his life had become. He stared at the creature lying in front of him, its tail curled like a massive whip, claws twitching in sleep. "Why me?" he asked aloud. "What made you stop?" The Vrex didn't answer. It only gave a low hum in its chest, peaceful, almost like purring. A soft knock came at the door. Elias turned. It wasn't a soldier. It was Kirill. She stepped inside, curious but cautious. "I had to see it up close," she said. "Not from a monitor," Elias shrugged. "There it is." She circled the beast slowly, eyes tracing its scars, its hardened hide, the strange markings on its forehead. "You know what these mean?" "No clue." "They're tribal, old, from before our kind even touched this planet. We believe they were extinct. But some say the Vrex once had language, pacts, even memory." "That thing has memory, all right," Elias muttered. "It looked at me like it remembered something." Kirill paused, staring at him. "You think you reminded of someone?" "I don't know. Maybe a species it liked. Or one that didn't hurt it." She sat beside him slowly. "We don't understand the Vrex. Every time we tried to study them, we died. But you're our chance to learn, to survive them." "You? Want me to be a translator?" Elias asked with a dry laugh. "I don't even speak its language. You speak its trust. That's more than anyone else ever managed." Suddenly, alarms flared through the base. Red lights blinked. A deep, vibrating horn echoed down the halls. Kirill jumped to her feet. "That's not a drill." Elias stood, grabbing his gear. The Vrex stirred, already alert and ready. A voice came over the base comms. "Warning. Perimeter breach. Unknown. Life forms entering from the eastern ridge. Multiple hostiles." "Repeat, multiple hostiles." Kirill turned to Elias. "We have to help." Outside, the sky darkened as dozens of winged creatures swarmed above the jungle canopy. Massive insect-like. Aliens creatures the Varkari called Skarn descended on the base with bladed limbs and armored hides. The Varkari troops rushed into position, firing anti-air cannons and plasma repeaters. Elias and Kirill reached the outer wall, and he stared in disbelief. "They're not just attacking," he said. "They're hunting." One of the Skarn swooped low, slicing a Varkari soldier in half. Screams echoed through the base. The Vrex growled beside Elias and leaped forward in a blur of motion. It slammed into the nearest Skarn, crushing it under its bulk. It tore through enemy ranks like a storm. The other soldiers watched, stunned. The creature fought not for survival, but to protect. Elias grabbed Kirill's arm. "They're following it. Use that. Coordinate around it." She nodded and shouted. Into her comms, "All squads, follow the Vrex. It's leading the charge." For the first time in Varkari military history, their forces moved behind a predator guided by a human, and the tide of the battle began to turn as plasma fire lit up the jungle and blood soaked the earth. One thing became certain to every soldier watching: this human wasn't just a survivor. He was something far more dangerous. He was the first to be accepted by the jungle's deadliest force. Asterisk smoke rose high above the jungle, mixing with the screams of the dying and the roar of weapons, firing from all directions. The Skarn attacked like a hive, with one mind fast, cruel, and without fear. Their sharp limbs tore through metal walls. Their acidic spit melted armor. But what no one expected was the Vrex. The apex predator had turned into a savage protector. It tore through the enemy lines, faster and stronger than anything that Varkari had ever seen. It didn't hesitate. It didn't retreat. It didn't even seem to care about its own safety. Elias ran right behind it, ducking blasts and dodging falling debris. His rifle was nearly out of charge, but he kept moving. He couldn't let the beast fight alone. Above, 3 Skarn warriors descended straight at him. Before Elias could raise his weapon, the Vrex launched itself upward. It tackled one midder, slammed it into a rock, and flung the corpse like a ragdoll into the other 2. A blur of claws followed. In seconds, the threat was gone. Elias just stared, panting hard. "I didn't think you'd come back for me." Vrex turned its glowing yellow eyes toward him and gave a low rumble. It had. On the ridge, Kirill was shouting orders. "Squads 4 and 5 circle the right. Cover the human and the beast." The Varkari soldiers responded, but their movements weren't perfect. Most had never fought beside the Vrex before. They feared it, distrusted it. Some still raised their weapons when it came close. But Elias didn't, and neither did Kirill. She joined him at the base of a shattered tree, panting. "That thing just saved 10 of my soldiers, maybe more." "Yeah," Elias said, "but it's tiring. We can't let it take on everything. You want me to tell the troops to protect a monster?" "No," Elias replied. "Tell them to protect an ally." Her eyes narrowed, but then she nodded and shouted into her coms again. "New command. Protect the Vrex." "It's a friendly." That one sentence changed everything. The soldiers stopped flinching when it passed. They began covering its flank, firing over its shoulders, throwing grenades where it pounced. The strange alliance was working, but the battle was far from over. A massive Skarn brute crashed through the northern wall. It was twice the size of the others, covered in thick armored plating, and its 4 red eyes burned with rage. It bellowed and charged through the base like a living tank. The Vrex spun around and growled louder than ever before. The ground trembled under its weight as it leapt forward, claws outstretched. The 2 apex beasts slammed into each other like gods at war. Elias watched in horror. The Skarn brute lifted the Vrex and threw it into a wall. The crash sent debris flying, but the Vrex got back up, bleeding but still breathing. It lunged again, slashing the brute's neck and dodging a spike arm aimed at its side. Elias didn't wait. He ran straight toward the wrecked supply depot and grabbed a high-powered rail launcher designed to pierce tanks. He turned back just in time to see the Skarn brute lift the Vrex off the ground and slam it again, this time into a pillar of steel. The beast whimpered, but didn't give up. Elias knelt, aimed the rail launcher, and breath steady. "Come on, give me a clean shot." The Vrex, barely holding on, clamped its jaws onto the brute's throat, holding it in place just long enough. Elias fired. The rail bolt blasted through the Skarn brute's skull. Its head snapped back, and it collapsed in a heap, twitching once. Before falling still, the battlefield went quiet. The Vrex stood slowly, blood dripping from its side, panting heavily. Elias dropped the launcher and rushed to it. Hey, stay with me." The beast staggered but didn't fall. It turned its head and let out a low sound, a tired, broken purr. Then it sank to the ground beside him, curling up with its eyes half closed. Elias reached out, resting his hand on its thick fur. "You did good." Around them, Varkari soldiers slowly approached, weapons lowered, faces stunned. They had witnessed something they never imagined. The Vrex had fought for them. General Vrex arrived moments later, limping slightly from a blast wound, his face grim. He looked at Elias. "The Skarn are retreating. We held the base." "Barely." Vrex nodded, then looked at the Vrex. "That thing saved us. I won't deny it, but this changes everything." "Yeah," Elias said, still petting the creature's side. "It does." Kirill stepped beside them. "You might not realize this yet, but the jungle just picked a side, and it picked you." The beast opened one golden eye at her voice. And Kirill, for the first time, knelt beside it. No fear, only respect. *2 2 days passed since the battle. The skies over the jungle still smoldered, and the base was full of broken metal, burned foliage, and bloodstains that would never wash away. But somehow, they had survived. And Elias had become something more than just a soldier. He walked through the camp now with Kirel at his side. Everywhere he went, Valkyrie soldiers paused and stared, some in awe, others still in disbelief. He didn't care about their stares. He cared about the creature that limped quietly behind him. The Vrex was healing, slowly. Its wounds had been deep. Even with regenerative tissue, it needed rest. And food, a lot of food. Think your command will actually allow it to stay? Elias asked. Kirel shrugged. General Vrex has no choice anymore. The council's seen the footage. Scientists, strategists, even the Queen herself. They're not asking why anymore, they're asking how. Elias looked back at the Vrex. It was sniffing a medical tent curiously. A medic backed away in alarm until Elias raised a hand. It's just curious. It's not just curiosity, Kirel said. It remembers. It learns. It trusts. That shouldn't be possible. And yet here we are. Later, in the command room, a group of high-ranking officers gathered around a holographic map. Red dots pulsed on the screen, showing new Skarn activity farther east, deeper into the jungle. We've never seen this many in one place, an officer muttered. It's like something is driving them. They're moving with purpose, Vrex said grimly. This isn't just a hunt. This is a push. Elias stepped forward. You said they're hive-based, right? What if the Queen's awake? Vrex looked at him. The Skarn Queen was never found. We believe she was dead, killed by orbital bombardment 5 years ago. Then what if she wasn't? Silence followed. Elias continued. What if something worse is coming? Something that even the Skarn fear or follow? The Vrex, who had been lying quietly in the corner of the room, suddenly lifted its head and growled. Deep, low, like a warning. Kirel's eyes widened. It understands. Everyone turned toward the beast. It stood and walked forward, claws clicking on the floor, then stopped in front of the hologram. It stared at a point near the edge of the red zone, an old, abandoned mining facility. Then it looked at Elias. And growled again. Elias turned to Vrex. It wants to go there. That's suicide, one officer barked. We've lost scouts in that region. The jungle eats machines. The fog is toxic. I'm not sending troops into that death trap, Vrex said. You won't have to, Elias replied. I'll go, me and it. You and the Vrex? The officer snapped. That's madness. It's worked so far. Vrex was quiet. Then, to everyone's surprise, he gave a slow nod. Fine. Take Kirel with you. 3-person team. Scout. Report. Don't engage. Kirel raised an eyebrow. 3? She's already there, Elias said. Gesturing behind Vrex, out from the shadows stepped another figure, slender, cloaked in dark jungle leathers. It was a young female Valkyrie, barely older than Elias, with sharp eyes and a strange charm in the way she moved. I'm Lyra, she said simply. Tracking specialist. I've been following the Skarn movements for weeks. Elias looked to the Vrex. It sniffed the air once, then walked up to Lyra and did not growl. Lyra grinned. Guess that's permission. The next morning they left. At sunrise. No soldiers, no drones. Just 3 scouts and the most feared beast on Cal 7, walking deeper into territory where no one came back. The jungle changed as they moved east. The trees grew denser. The light dimmer. Moss glowed faintly under their boots, and strange sounds whispered in the leaves, clicking, buzzing, moaning from somewhere far away. Lyra led the way, her steps silent. Kirel covered the rear, rifle in hand. Elias stayed near the Vrex, who paused often, sniffing the wind or scraping its claws against tree trunks. It was tracking something. By the third day, they found what the Skarn had been hiding. The ground opened into a crater deep and wide, filled with broken metal, giant insect husks, and a half-buried structure pulsing with blue light. Kirel stared in awe. That's not Vakari. That's ancient. Older than either of our people, Lyra whispered. Could this be the origin site? The Vrex walked to the edge and growled again, louder now. It was afraid. Elias looked down into the crater, then back at the Vrex. What are we looking at? And then something moved. Not a Skarn, not a drone. Something bigger. Rising slowly from the center of the crater was a shape long armored, insect-like, but its eyes weren't red like the others. They were glowing green, and they were watching Elias. Vrex stepped forward, claws digging into the dirt, fur rising, muscles tensing. For the first time since they met, Elias saw something new in the apex predator's eyes. Fear. Asterisk. The jungle was silent. The only sound was the distant hum of energy, rising from the crater, low, steady, and unnatural. Elias stood frozen, watching the massive shape rise from the pit, too large for any regular Skarn. Its body was plated with armor like living metal, glistening with toxic green lines that pulsed with every breath. 8 legs curled around its frame like sharpened branches, and its 2 main arms ended in serrated claws longer than a grown man. And its eyes. They weren't mindless. They were calculating. Lyra whispered, That's not just a queen. Kirel barely breathed. It's something worse. It's evolved. The Vrex stood in front of Elias, muscles tight, shoulders lowered like a predator about to charge, but it didn't. It didn't growl. Didn't roar. It waited. The thing below them, whatever it was, rose to its full height, towering over the crater walls. Then it let out a sound, not a scream or roar, but a deep chittering pulse, like 1,000 razor wings slicing through the air. Elias felt it in his bones. The Vrex flinched. The creature had spoken. Elias didn't understand the sound, but the Vrex did. It stepped backward. What's happening? Elias asked. Lyra knelt, eyes wide. I think that thing gave a command. To attack? Kirel asked. No, Lyra said slowly. To submit. Elias looked at the Vrex. It was breathing faster now. Not panic, but torn. Its eyes flicked between the crater and Elias, back and forth, as if being pulled in 2 directions. It knows her, Elias whispered. Kirel turned to him. Knows who? Elias stepped forward. That thing, it's not just a queen. It's the Vrex's mother. No one spoke. The Vrex let out a long, trembling breath. Then it lowered its head. No, Elias said. Don't. But it kept stepping forward. The queen watched silently, unmoving, arms resting on the crater rim like a dark god waiting for judgment. More Skarn were emerging from underground, smaller than her, dozens of them, surrounding the crater's edge. Like worshippers gathering around a high priestess, Lyra grabbed Elias's arm. If it rejoins the hive, it's over. The Vrex knows our base, our tech, our strategy. If it turns, it won't, Elias said, pulling free. It won't. Betray me. He ran down the slope. Elias. Kirel shouted, but he didn't stop. The Vrex was halfway to the crater's edge, moving slowly, shoulders low. Its movements were not like before, not like the protector Elias had known. They were heavy, like it was being called back to something. It had tried to forget. Elias caught up and placed a hand on its side. The Vrex stopped. I'm right here, he whispered. You don't have to go to her. You don't belong to her. The Vrex didn't look at him. It just stared forward. Then, from across the crater, the queen moved for the first time. Her head tilted, long antennae flicking. Then she let out Another wave of that chittering command, stronger this time. More forceful. The Skarn around her hissed and clacked in approval. The Vrex shook. "Hey," Elias said, stepping in front of the beast. "Look at me." The Vrex finally turned its head. Its golden eyes locked with Elias's. "I'm not your alpha," Elias said softly. "I never was, but I'm your friend. You saved me. Fought beside me. You didn't have to." He stepped closer, resting his forehead gently against the beast's scaled hide. "You chose me. And I choose you." Another command came from the Queen, louder, more desperate. The Vrex closed its eyes, and then it roared. A deep, thunderous sound that shook the ground, echoed across the crater, and silenced every Skarn in an instant. The Queen froze. The Vrex turned around, not toward her, but away from her. Back to Elias. And it stood beside him again. The Queen shrieked. The Skarn army surged forward. "Move!" Elias shouted, pulling his rifle. "Fall back to the ridge." Lyra and Kirill ran, covering the rear. The Vrex turned and launched into the swarm, buying them time. It slashed through the insect creatures like a whirlwind of fangs and claws. Never hesitating, never looking back, Elias reached the top of the ridge and turned. "Come on." The Vrex ripped free from a pile of attackers and leapt to him, bleeding, battered, but alive. Together, they vanished into the trees. Hours later, they made camp inside a collapsed ancient shelter. The stars flickered above through cracks in the ceiling. The jungle was strangely quiet, as if even it had paused in disbelief. Elias cleaned the Vrex's wounds, wrapping plasma bandages around deep gashes. It lay still, breathing slow, no longer torn, only tired. Kirill finally broke the silence. "It chose you over its own kind." Elias nodded. "That wasn't just loyalty. That was a choice." Lyra crouched near them. "What now?" "The Queen's awake. She knows you. She won't stop now." "She come," Elias said, "but so will we." The Vrex opened one eye, and for the first time, Elias saw pride in it. They returned to the base just after dawn. Elias, Kirill, Lyra, and the Vrex walked through the front gates in silence, covered in mud, blood, and bruises. The guards at the wall lowered their weapons. The base had seen survivors return before, but never like this. Word spread fast. The Queen had awakened. And the Vrex, the apex predator of Cal 7, had chosen the human over her. General Vrex stood on the command platform. Eyes narrowed as the group approached. "You went into the heart of the jungle," he said, voice low and tense, "and came back with war behind you." Elias nodded. "She's gathering the hive, preparing to wipe out everything that isn't hers." "She come for us," Kirill added. "For the Vrex, for Elias." Vrex glanced at the beast. "And what happens if she turns it again?" "She won't," Elias said firmly. "Not now." The Vrex stood beside him like a wall of muscle and fury, but its eyes were clear, steady, free. Vrex was silent. Then, slowly, he stepped down and looked the creature in the face. It didn't growl, didn't move. It just stood there. "I want it ready," Vrex said. "We'll build a command plan around it. But if it hesitates, it won't," Elias said, "and neither will I." Preparations began immediately. The jungle would not give them time. The Queen's army was moving fast. Every drone scan showed waves of Skarn pushing through the eastern trees, consuming everything in their path. The base had one last stand to give. Elias stood beside the Vrex in the hangar, strapping on his combat gear. "We're going to need each other again." The beast rumbled low, nudging his shoulder like a companion. Kirill approached from the shadows. "They've never let a human lead a Valkyrie charge before." Elias smiled. "Good. Time to make history." An hour later, the skies turned dark, not from clouds, But from wings, the queen had arrived. The Skarn surged forward like a living flood, crawling, flying, swarming. Their queen hovered behind them, towering over the battlefield, her glowing green eyes locked on one thing. The human Elias stood on the wall, the Vrex beside him. Kirill and Lyra flanked them with squads of Akari soldiers. The tension in the air was thick, like lightning just waiting to strike. And then it broke. The queen screamed. The Skarn attacked. Cannons fired. Plasma lit up the jungle. Explosions shook the trees. The Varkari fought hard, but the enemy was endless. Until the Vrex leapt from the wall. It landed in the middle of the swarm, claws flashing, fangs snapping. It fought like a force of nature, ripping apart anything that came close to Elias. Soldiers pushed forward behind it, using its fury as cover. Elias charged straight through the chaos, carving a path toward the queen. The Vrex followed him, never letting him out of sight. The queen descended from her perch, slamming into the earth with a sound like shattering mountains. Her legs sliced through tanks. Her shriek melted circuits. She saw Elias running toward her. And she charged. Elias didn't slow. The Vrex collided with her mid-charge. The two titans slammed into each other, a blur of muscle, fangs, and shrieking rage. The queen struck fast, but the Vrex struck harder. It no longer hesitated. It was no longer confused. It had made its choice. Elias reached a ridge above the crater and pulled out the last weapon he had, a thermal charge, primed to overload on contact. He shouted, "Now!" The Vrex tackled the queen into the pit. They crashed, hard, cracking stone, tearing roots. Elias sprinted to the edge and leapt down. He hit the ground hard, rolled, and landed near the queen's twisted leg. She turned toward him, green eyes narrowing. Elias shoved the charge beneath her thorax and dove away. The Vrex leapt clear just as the queen exploded. The blast lit the crater like a second sun. Fire rained down. The Skarn screeched and froze. Without their queen, they twitched, lost. Then they began to scatter, crawling into holes, retreating into the trees. The jungle fell silent. Smoke curled from the queen's smoldering corpse. Elias coughed and stood. The Vrex limped to him, wounded but alive. They faced the burning jungle together. Back at the base, Kirill and Lyra watched the Skarn vanish, the tide broken. General Vrex exhaled and lowered his head. "He did it," Kirill whispered. "No," Lyra said. "They did it." The next day, the jungle was calm. The war was over. Elias sat near the healing chambers, one hand resting gently on the Vrex's side. "You didn't just protect me," he said. "You gave me a reason to fight." The Vrex gave a soft sound, half growl, half purr. And outside, across every world where Cal 7's broadcasts now played, beings of every species saw something they never expected. A human standing beside the most feared creature of the wild, not as master, not as prey, but as its chosen. The predator had picked its bond, and that bond changed the galaxy. Forever.